Hello, everyone. Welcome. David and Sierra will be joining us any moment. So just get settled in. Make sure that you have a beverage, tea or something, and we'll get going in just a few minutes. I know they were just finishing an Instagram live to let people know that we would be starting soon.
Wow, I'm over here talking to everyone, welcoming you. It's just, I'm muted, you know. Let's see. Just wait for David to pop in. We'll let everyone filter in here. Welcome, welcome. Happy Saturday, y'all.
Hey, 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 hey,
hey, hey, hey. All right.
Touching screen. Okay. Hey, everybody. Hey, Graham. Good to see you. Hey, Rebecca. Sebas is here. Molly's here. Hooray.
We got Moonbath Dakota is here.
Oh,
yay.
Hey, I was wondering who that is. Okay.
Who's
hey,
Moonbath?
Moonbath. Wonderful. And Renee. I'm not sure I know Renee, but welcome.
Yay. And more people might be joining in, but thank you all so much for coming and showing up live for this chat. It's going to be real juicy. We just got like a little tiny preview on Instagram Live, and I'm very excited. I brought a journal, so if, you know, if you need, everyone should probably be writing things down. Yes, Molly has one too. So Molly and I are the founders of Cultivate Balance. She's there waving, and we are so honored to get to host David McConaghay, who is an Ayurvedic doctor, a Vedic astrologer, and he's also a Doctor of Divinity candidate. And he is creating what he calls Veda Dave's multi-dimensional ecosystem. You can check out at vedadave.com. He is doing some absolutely brilliant work. Definitely check out his website. I was just saying on IG Live, it's like I get so excited when it comes out because it is so juicy and amazing. Are you guys able to hear me? I feel like my internet is unstable. Is it okay?
It broke up a little bit there, but I think
okay.
We'll hold on here.
You got the gist. We're here in Boulder, Colorado. David is over in Portugal, 20 miles outside of Lisbon.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. 20 minutes. 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, love it. Close enough to the beach. Gorgeous. So we're having a whole international experience here. So if the internet would be internet, I suppose.
Yeah.
Anyways, welcome, David. Thank you so much for being here with us. We're so excited.
I'm so pleased to be here with you. Nice to see Reese in the chat as well here. And so thank you, as always, for hosting me. This is the fourth, maybe even the fifth one of these that we've done.
Are we having an internet moment?
Can you hear me? Am I alive? You can hear me just fine? Okay. See, it has been several months, really since February, since I've had a stable internet connection. And I moved into this, like, it's like, this little studio apartment that's designed for students and teachers, and the internet is fast and stable, and it just zips along.
Oh, yeah.
And I cannot tell you what a luxury this is. You don't know what you've got until it's gone. Somebody should write a song about that, you know? And so, yeah, very pleased to be here with you as always. And as always, we have a lot to cover. So I appreciate the brief introduction. And so let's just dive right in. Am I a host?
I want to say real quick.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I can definitely make you a host. And also, I'll just say, y'all, this is a meeting in this format for a reason, so that people can totally unmute themselves. You're welcome to jump in, ask questions, make a point. Like, it's really intended to be interactive, so feel free. David's here for it.
Type your questions into the chat, whatever you're comfortable with, but we want this to be really supportive of your experience and things that you want to better understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Reiterate that. Graham, unmute yourself.
Hello, I might just take the opportunity to introduce myself before we start, if that's all right. Apologies if you can't hear me all that clear, but I'm Graham, and Dave and I met on a retreat in Barcelona, and we had some great conversations, and he's really just introduced me to this world, which I am very much a novice of, but I'm very open-minded and looking forward to seeing what's in store today. I've started my journey. I'm very much committed to it now, and I am coming from Scotland. I'm in Glasgow. Pleasure hearing from you, and take it away. Look forward to it.
Welcome, Graham. Thank you for introducing yourself.
Yeah, so happy to see you here. Brilliant. New brother out in the world here.
That's so cool. Wow.
So just to really touch on exactly what we just said about it being a collaborative thing. So I want to share, there's a couple quotations here. And this is from a guy named Matthew Remski. And Remski is part of a podcast that started up in the last couple months called Conspirituality. And it focuses on what we've seen out in the world of this confluence between spiritual, yogi, new age teachings and these conspiracy theories, and how they both go down the same rabbit hole, and people preaching meditation as a cure for COVID. And while obviously meditation has its benefits and is relaxing to the nervous system, which is good for your immune system, all that very, very true and valid, but it's also can be potentially quite dangerous to tell people all you need to do is use the Course in Miracles to cure yourself of a deadly disease, right? There's an irresponsibility there. And so Remski has proposed this concept of disaster spirituality. And we'll just read this. So in Shock Doctrine, Naomi Klein, who is a reporter for The Intercept these days and has written several books, Klein elaborates how events like Hurricane Katrina allowed a gang of feds and oligarchs to restructure New Orleans according to robber baron ethics that shattered the local institutions that had protected vulnerable populations as best they could. Predatory lending, new forms of redlining, the gutting of local politics and media, and corporate subsidies for box store retailers all proliferated in the aftermath to capitalize on a reeling people and their fragile assets. Klein brilliantly tracks this as a global phenomenon. Any disruption, war, economic crash, famine becomes not only a sales opportunity, but a gateway to neoliberal recolonization. So this is something to be aware of, like out in the world in general. It's happening in a major way right now. And what's really interesting about what Remski does is he ties it to, I thought I had this other thing open, or how do I do this? Okay. He ties it to, oh shoot, being clumsy with my technology. He connects it to disaster spirituality. Disaster spirituality is just as deceptive as disaster capitalism. They're not helping you rebuild. They're not selling you a real lifeline, purpose-built for the circumstance. They're selling you what they always had for sale, a messianic promise, a charismatic comfort. They're recycling old material and pretending that it can scale up to global service. They're pretending that spiritual inspiration can stand in for epidemiology. They're pretending that personal certainty can outshine the hard work of consensus building medicine. Disaster spirituality is not spirituality at all. It is parasitic upon the spiritual impulse. If your heart can be captivated by mystery and melancholic at uncertainty, it will come to exploit those tender and trusting hearts. So I want to start with this because, you know, when I read that, I immediately got a ping within myself about like, am I doing that? And is, you know, we specifically, you know, started these talks as, you know, the Jyotish of COVID. And you know, there's been positive response to this, and more people have looked at this than most people have looked at any of my other work, right? And so I got this immediate like, oh my God, like, am I a disaster spiritualist? And really wanted to check myself. And so I was in conversation with Remsky about this, and sort of trying to figure out, how do I know whether I am repurposing what I'm already offering to try to capitalize on a disaster versus offering something that is of true value and support to people in a time of crisis, in a time of uncertainty. And of course, in my heart, in my intentions, I'm of course just trying to help and be of service, but one of the major like first lessons of the social justice movement is that intent does not equal impact. So we want to be, I just want to be really, really careful about this. And one of the things that Remsky said to me that was so helpful was basically looking at what is the actual impact. And he was saying he is skeptical if a reasonable person says, okay, David said ABC because of XYZ, and therefore I'm going to take action 1, 2, 3. He's skeptical of that. And I tend to agree with that. I don't mean for this to be prescriptive or even predictive. And what he encouraged, and that feels good to me, is something along the lines of almost like a performance piece, as if you were to go to the park and hear a piece of music, so that it was something soothing and contemplative that gave you a break from the onslaught of intensity of the world, and gave you refreshed perspective in order to reapproach your activism, your survival, your day-to-day life in a good way, with refreshed energy, with new vigor, and to engage more deeply in the frankly hard work of revolution, and so not as a band-aid, but as a balm, as something that's actually going to help us understand what's happening and take good action as a result. So that's what I want to say right up front, and that, because that was really I think I've been doing that. I think we've done a pretty good job of naming what this is, but I just want to be really, really careful about that, because I feel really sensitive generally as a white male propagating Vedic teachings, not my heritage, not my, it's just like, it's sensitive to begin with. And we're in the realm of wanting to honor and appreciate rather than appropriate, right? So that's really where I wanted to start right now. First and foremost, to share with you those ideas if they're new to you, and it has been a very helpful lens. Klein's idea of disaster capitalism, and then Remsky, and he does it with Julian Mark Walker, who's a yoga teacher out of LA, and Derek Perez, who's a musician and multi-talented individual. And it's a wonderful podcast, Conspirituality, really, really valuable insights in the world. And again, I will say, I don't agree with everything they're saying, but I think they're offering an important counterpoint to some prevailing narratives at the moment. Okay, everybody okay with that? I see some comments coming through. I'm glad that's helpful. Any response. That's sort of our first little section here. Anybody want to say anything about that? Take a drink of water. Okay. Great. Dakota's into it. I know you are. That's brilliant. Okay. So, yes. All of that to say that there's a lot to feel right now. And it is a hard moment in history. And so, you know, those tender and trusting parts, or those parts that want to be tender and want to trust the world but aren't so sure that they can right now. I personally am feeling quite vulnerable as a human on the planet at the moment. It is a very uncertain time in so many ways. And so I really want to start there and acknowledge that and just name that might be true for some of you present with us, some of you watching in the future, that and in your present moment, our future moment. And so to just be with that for a moment, and I'm specifically thinking in terms of this explosion that happened in Beirut earlier this week. Horrifying scenes, really chaotic aftermath of this totally unexpected event, and there is immediately the conspiracy theories pop up, and there's an official narrative, and then there's the countervailing narratives. People want to accuse Israel, and people want to accuse Hezbollah, and it immediately goes into the politics of the thing. And again, as a distant observer without any inside information, there's no way of knowing the capital T truth at this moment. But one of the things that comes to mind is what Hannah Arendt called the banality of evil. And the story that's being told is that this was a shipment of ammonium nitrate that shouldn't have been there, but because of bureaucratic reasons couldn't get moved, and it wasn't supposed to be in there in the first place, but then they wouldn't let it move anywhere else, and just this bureaucratic sort of stall that happened over the course of many years, 5, 10, 15 years, and the result is this terrible explosion, and so we're mourning lives and significant injuries, and the city of Beirut is in a chaotic moment where their primary grain storage was right there, and so there's a lot going on, so we want to be sensitive to that. And Molly, would you be willing to paste that link? There's a really excellent we've got some trusted friends who I went to school with who are big in international development, and they do wonderful work all around the world, and this is the link that they suggested that people donate to. So if you are financially capable, would strongly recommend sending some money in this direction, and Molly will put that in the chat here. So that's the thing. And so with that in mind, thank you, Molly. And with that in mind, I just want to look at the chart of that moment. This is the exact moment of that explosion. And I don't want to look at myself. Great, that's better. So this is the chart for the moment of the explosion, and really most of the action is we're looking down here. This is Sagittarius rising, and with Jupiter right on the ascendant. Jupiter retrograde in Sagittarius right on the ascendant. First thought is that the primary function of Jupiter is to expand things. It is associated with the ether element, which is the expansive force in the universe. And what is an explosion other than a rapid expansion of energy? The other thing that's, I mean, there's a couple, one of the things of interest in this chart is, of course, how everything is lined up in this very tight axis. So there's Sagittarius and Gemini. Oh, no, come on, technology. There we go. And then Cancer, Capricorn, right? So everything, pretty much everything in the chart except Mars up here in Pisces is happening right in this pretty skinny axis, which is right along the plane of the galaxy, basically looking straight towards, when we look towards Sagittarius, we're looking towards the center of the galaxy. When we look towards Gemini, we're looking towards the deep space. And so Saturn opposing the Sun is this really pressurized energy where our life force is being squeezed a bit, and one of the ways to imagine Saturn impacting the Sun is, you think of the Sun, this big, what is the Sun but one big ongoing explosion, and this constant source of energy and life and radiant heat, and it's just this is the nature of the Sun. It's consistent and it's hot. And then Saturn is the planet of structure and pressure and containment, and again, an explosion, a bomb is heat under pressure, and it reaches a certain tipping point, and the heat can no longer be contained, and there we go. So there's that relationship happening. The main thing that draws my attention is this happened right as K2 down here went into Gandanta. And this concept of Gandanta is something that we've talked about on these sessions before, but I want to talk about it in a bit of detail today. So there are 3 Gandanta points, and they happen right here. This is between Scorpio. So this is Scorpio. This is Sagittarius, and right between is a Gandanta point. There's another one here between Pisces and Aries, and there's another one here between Cancer and Leo. And so the key way, one of the fundamental ways to understand these points in the chart is to understand the way the elements flow through the chart. So Aries is the traditional first sign of the zodiac. It is a mobile fire sign. And so it starts, we go fire, earth, air, water. And then it starts over. Fire, earth, air, water. Fire, lost my clicker. Fire, earth, air, water. And so where the water signs meet a fire sign becomes this transitional moment where a cycle is starting over. We've gone through the whole cycle and we're coming to the next portion of it. And this is, it's a type of joint, right? And there's a different, the Vedic texts make a distinction between a sandhi and a sangama. And so a sangama is a place where 2 rivers come together and join. This is considered an auspicious place, auspicious placement, because it's 2 things that merge smoothly into one. And there may be some turbulence, but basically, when 2 rivers come together, it's a very beautiful and potent place. This intermingling of energies, very beautiful. Has a lot of spiritual metaphor to that you can think about for yourself. So that's a sangama. Sandhi is a joint. Think about your 2 bones coming together, right? It's the energies aren't joining and merging. They're 2 different things that maintain their unique qualities, but they come together. And so that's what's happening. These Gandanta points are sandhi, and they're considered weak points in the chart. And what do we say? The weakest link in a chain, right, is the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And so we know that these joints, that these transition places are where we are vulnerable. And the metaphor that I use very often for these places is a volcano where the lava hits the ocean. And it's this very tumultuous place. It's very creative. There's a lot of possibility. Again, like your elbow joint, your knee allows for a lot of interesting movements and dynamism. And where where lava hits the ocean, new land is being created, and it's very fertile soil, and it's this very interesting place, but it's dangerous. You do not want to be in a little boat where lava is hitting the ocean. You're in trouble there. And so it's this very delicate, precarious, dynamic, tumultuous place in the sky. And so here, and we define a Gandanta point as being within 3 degrees on either side of the sign. So, 3 degrees here, 3 degrees here. So there's really this 6-degree portion as it crosses this line, right? And that happens at these 3 places in the zodiac. And so Ketu, which is the south node of the moon, the astronomy lesson, we'll have to wait for a different time about what that is. Ketu, which is really the past life planet, and has to do with like hidden power, hidden energies, unexpected events, the sort of thing where Mozart could write symphonies as a small child, and he didn't learn how to do that in this lifetime. He came in ready to do that, but and so that's a very surprising quality in a young child, and yet all the energies are there to make it happen. And so this explosion fits that description as well. All the ingredients were there, all the energies were there, where they say it was a welding, somebody was doing some welding in the building and a spark flew, and it set off this chain of events that led to this, what looked like a nuclear bomb, right? It had that mushroom cloud type quality. And so this is a Ketu in Gandanta event is the first thing, that the main thing that jumps out to me about it is this sort of past life, these surprising energies, this sort of karmic event that you can't see coming. It's there's a term for it. It's a black swan event, the sort of thing where in retrospect you look back and all the signs were obvious, but it's completely shocking and surprising when it happens. It comes out of nowhere. And so it's Ketu, when it gets in this tumultuous place, fire and water, and it literally was right in the harbor, in the port of Beirut. So it literally was, an explosion right on the water, right? It's a very specific Gandanta moment, right? This big fiery plume right on the water. So that's what I wanted to say about that before we go into the historical record, because I wanted to look back. So one of the things, let's clear this. Rahu and Ketu, here they are at 2 degrees of their respective signs, Gemini and Sagittarius. Rahu and Ketu always move retrograde. They're constantly moving backwards. So when they're at 2 degrees of a sign, that means that they've come into a sign and they spend 18 months moving all the way through and are about to enter the next sign. And so it's September 22nd, 23rd. So next month that Rahu and Ketu will change signs from this Gemini Sagittarius axis into the this is Taurus and Scorpio axis. So this is a shift that happens every 18 months and is a really interesting filter through which to look at history. And they really do mark these distinct phases in the timeline of world history. And so we'll look at that a little bit, but I specifically wanted to look at what are the historical precedents for when Ketu is in Gandanta between Sagittarius and Scorpio. And so let's see, I gotta pull up my notes. I realize I can't see anybody right now. Is everybody doing okay? Everybody is okay. This is making sense. This is with me here. Okay. Okay. So the last time K2 was in this location, well, okay, first I want to sketch out a major thing. I don't know enough about the testing of nuclear weapons to know how frequent an occurrence it has been in world history, but looking back in the 80s, in the 60s, in previous occurrences, just looking back, there's a bunch of websites where you can say, this day in history, and you can just sort of scroll through and see what were the significant events during these time periods. That's my main strategy for researching these events and these time periods. And in these K2 and Gandanta moments, there's this, it jumped out at me, there's always 3 or 4 nuclear tests, whether it's the USSR or the US or France, or there's all these different nuclear tests happening in these moments. And so the fact that this explosion in Lebanon looked like a nuclear bomb and had this expansive radius and really trouble the whole city, that sort of fits with that aspect of the historical record. Okay, so the last time that K2 was in this placement was between December 2001 and April 2002. So one thing to immediately note is that December 2001 is immediately in the aftermath of an extremely significant historical event. The events of September 11th permanently changed the world. Definitely the United States, but if we think about airline security, we think about what happened, the Patriot Act, the whole world has never quite been the same after 2001 because of the way that the American national security state has evolved. And so we are coming to the end of the parallel period of Rahu in Gemini, K2 in Sagittarius. This is the placement of those nodes when 9/11 happened. So we're coming to the end of that period. And so it's interesting, we want to look at what happens next. And we do have our own, sure enough, we have our own correlate to something as transformative as the events of 9/11, if not more so in this COVID situation, right? This worldwide pandemic that has forever changed how the whole world interacts with each other. Yes. So we mentioned this in a previous version of this talk called Apocalyptic Astrology. We talked about how the previous periods of Rahu and Gemini, K2 and Sagittarius lined up with 9/11. Previous to that, I still haven't found a major event in the early 80s, except that it was Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, Reaganomics, which, and that whole, there is no societies, it's just a bunch of individuals, right? That ideology arose as the predominating economic perspective for the major player, major world powers, and that has had its own reverberating effects over the decades. So that's that. Before that, it was the JFK assassination. Before that, it was the nuclear bombs being dropped on Hiroshima and my heart hurts because I can't think of the name of the other town. Forgive me. So that's the historical period that we're in, and coming to the end of. We're coming to the end. Nagasaki. Thank you. We're coming to the end of that period, and so we are having our major transformative event, and when we're seeing a major explosion, and so okay, back to dialing into this Ketu, this specific period where Ketu is in Gandanta, which it will be. I know I wrote it down. Ketu will be in Gandanta from the 7th of September this year until from the 7th of September until the 7th of October is really when it's the height of its Gandanta period. So this is the time we want to watch out for. Okay. The last time in late 2001, early 2002, was the Argentine economic crisis. Argentina, famously, their currency crashed. There were riots in the street. It was like Weimar Germany in the rise of fascism, where the currency collapsed and there was chaos as a result of that. So luckily Argentina more or less figured themselves out in the following years, but not without a lot of transition in that society. So that happened. Enron filed for bankruptcy in that period. Major exposure of fraud and corporate malfeasance. The euro came into being. The European currency became a thing in that time period. There was a volcano that erupted in the Congo. George W. Bush gave a State of the Union speech in which he named the axis of evil as Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. So he specifically named, and this is now a famous trope, the axis of evil. The U.S. invaded Afghanistan. This was the first action in the aftermath of, the first major action in the aftermath of 9/11 was to invade Afghanistan. U.S. troops are still in Afghanistan, still fighting that war, this imperialist mission, and so these things jump out as in a very short period of time. The economy of a major country like Argentina completely disappeared, basically. Enron, as the classic example of corporate fraud, filed for bankruptcy, and these Middle Eastern military escapades, which is the most frivolous possible way to describe what is a horrific stain on humanity, all began. One other thing that's notable to mention, Halle Berry was the first woman of color to be named Best Actress at the Academy Awards. And just as a quick shout out for my Cultivate Balance and Moonbath ladies, Ja Rule and Ashanti's classic hit Always on Time was #1 on the charts. So just we need to there were still dance parties happening in 2001. It's all good. Yeah. So that's the most recent time that this happened. The time before that, we're looking at, it was the summer of 1983. And what's interesting, one of the first things that jumped up to my attention there is that there was a peace deal reached between Lebanon and Israel. This is a very prominent thing at the time. So Lebanon, and it'd be interesting to look at, it is possible to run a birth chart for a country So it'd be interesting to look at Lebanon's specific birth chart and see how all this lines up in their chart. You know, maybe Sagittarius is their first house or something, or Scorpio. And, you know, we just that's a bit of speculation, but it'd be interesting to see what is it about Ketu in Gandanta between Sagittarius and Scorpio that brings Lebanon to the fore. Now, of course, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine are at the heart of global issues for the last century, last several millennia. So one of the things that I'm very aware of and trying to be careful of in this type of research is that I am obviously cherry picking events, right? These are just prominent events that arose to my attention. They happen to be what was listed on the sites that I looked at. So there's a very arbitrary quality to this, but really we're trying to just, again, it's without making any predictions or saying this is what it is. We're trying to explore the energetics of this moment in history to understand what's happening, what sort of things have happened before, what sort of things might we expect to happen now. And so Lebanon, peace accord with Israel. Let's see. Yeah, nuclear tests. France, what was the USSR at the time, and the US all performed nuclear tests. Margaret Thatcher's Conservative Party won a majority of seats in Parliament. Sally Ride became the first woman to go into space. So there is, you know, it does also seem to be this social justice aspect to this moment in history, which makes a certain amount of sense. This is, let's clear this. The first 13 degrees of Sagittarius here is called Mula Nakshatra. And that word mula means root. And it is literally like the root of creation, as when we look from our perspective on Earth in that direction, we're looking to the center of the galaxy. This is going to be the Milky Way galaxy, just like that. And so we're looking to the black hole in the center of the galaxy, the root. You know, we are this spiraling solar system at the edge of a spiraling galaxy, and there's a black hole at the center of the Milky Way, out of which everything spirals. And the view to that is through Mula. And it is this very uprooting energy. It's the part of us that needs to, you know, before we plant a garden, we have to clear the soil and uproot, clear all the rocks and the old roots and clear it out so that we have fresh soil in which to plant things. That is the energy of Mula. And so it is the most transformative place in the sky. This area is the most tumultuous, transformative place in the sky. There's always interesting things going on down there. Okay. Let's see. In June of 1983, Iran invaded Iraq. Wouldn't you know it? France invaded Algeria, and 2 congressmen admitted to having sex with their pages. And so these issues, none of this is new. None of this is new, right? These are these same themes coming up again and again and again. One of the other, couple other historical things. There was a military coup in Guatemala, and Manuel Noriega became the de facto dictator in Panama. And so there, you know, again, we don't even need to go in too deeply into the realm of conspiracies to know that U.S. intelligence was involved in all of these coups in Central and South America, and just to see the way that people making moves, making big moves. David Bowie's Let's Dance was #1 on the charts, just to mention that. And it was the first ever National Missing Children's Day. And so again, naming these, you know, the missing children and the politicians in trouble for, you know, sexual misconduct is, again, these are major themes that are present right now. And again, being careful of the conspiracy side of it, there's a very real issue in the world with child sex trafficking, human trafficking, and you know, politicians and all sorts of powerful people misusing that power. And so these issues, I don't know, again, I don't know anything about how entangled those issues are, but it is observably coming up as a major theme in public discussion. So that's we're seeing those parallels. Yeah, and then the time before that was the fall and winter of 1964, just getting into January of 65. And Martin Luther King won the Nobel Peace Prize. Beatlemania was in full swing. People were going wild for the Beatles. And Lyndon Baines Johnson won in a landslide over Barry Goldwater. And this was this period, this was right after the Gulf of Tonkin incident. So we can say that, you know, the JFK assassination and the Gulf of Tonkin incident are the 9/11 of that time period. And the result, the aftermath, is the escalation of the Vietnam War, which Lyndon Johnson, you know, went full for. And so it's interesting in this particular time period, what again was the USSR and China were providing aid and infrastructure in North Vietnam. And so again, these same stories just keep playing out. And who are the countries being demonized in the media, in our political spectrum right now? It's Russia and China, these big, evil, bad countries who, you know, are there any worse than the US? No, everybody's just looking out for their best interests, and everybody's doing a terrible job of treating humans like humans. We're not doing a good job of living on the planet. I'm sorry if that's news, but we really need to do something differently. Okay, so that's a little bit of the history lesson. I guess one of the things I want to emphasize about this is the parallel between the fall, you know, like this period 1964, 1965, and 2001, 2002, 2003. And okay, let's look at a different photo. Everybody with me? Is this okay? Is this making sense? Please just, you know, raise your hand, yell, tell me something if there's something that's happening. Okay, this is a chart that I made for a previous presentation, but it's really, really interesting, showing the time periods when when Rahu and Ketu are in these different axes, right? So Rahu, yeah, Graham, are you asking if you want to like take a screenshot? You absolutely, yeah, totally, no problem. Go ahead. So this is so okay, when Rahu is in Sagittarius, these are these dates, and then Rahu goes into Taurus, these dates. Rahu goes into Aries, these dates. Can you see my cursor when I move it in a circle like this? Can you see that? That's good to know. Okay. Okay, so I want to draw attention to this period as it relates to, it's going to move my little things in the way. This technology, this period. And so it was in this period that JFK was assassinated and the Gulf of Tonkin incident happened. And then in this period that the Vietnam War ramped up and was drastically escalated, and tens of thousands of young Americans started to be drafted. And, you know, you look at the numbers at the end of the war, which was 1975, by the way. So this was, you know, really like at least a 11, 12 year debacle. And, you know, there were 2 million, they guess 2 million civilians killed. There were hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese soldiers killed. And I think something like, I might be getting this right, but 160,000 US soldiers killed in Vietnam for like nothing was accomplished. It was false pretenses, you know, it was the Gulf of Tonkin incident was this sort of justification to ramp it up, but the Gulf of Tonkin is a total fraud. It's a proven false flag event. So the correlate is in this period when 9/11 happened, and then in this period when we invaded Afghanistan and then Iraq. And at this point, those wars have been going on even longer. And it's one of the interesting things that, again, like obviously the Orange King is a buffoon and one of the most dangerous people on the planet, but his has on several occasions tried to pull troops out of the Middle East, and there's huge establishment pushback against that. He gets demonized. He gets demonized all the time, I mean, rightfully so, but he gets specifically demonized. It's one of the more unforgivable crimes, according to most mainstream sources, when he's trying to pull troops out of the Middle East. So it's interesting that we're coming back around to another cycle, and he's actually shown some impetus to shift the perspective there. You know, I have nothing else nice to say about that person, so I'm just gonna move on. But anyway, the point of emphasizing these parallels is that, okay, we had a false flag, you know, an event rife with conspiratorial energy, right? Who knows if Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, but man, is it clear that lots of powerful people benefited from JFK being assassinated, and less the people than the agenda of going to war, of you know, greater control. JFK had a totally different agenda and vision for the world. He was trying to cooperate with Russia and decelerate the nuclear arms race, and you know, once he was out of the way, the program sort of continued as planned. And that was this escalation of the war against poor brown people in Vietnam. And then same sort of thing with 9/11, where intelligent people can and do disagree about what happened on that day, but you know, a plane did not collapse Building 7 of the World Trade Center. A plane did not crash in a field in Pennsylvania. A plane did not hit the Pentagon. It's just like it's so obvious. I'm embarrassed to even have to say it, but them's the facts, and there's so much research out there to show that. And so anyway, again, intelligent people can and do disagree about what happened, but it was this major event with a lack of clarity around what actually happened that led to an invasion of a foreign country, a war on poor brown people, basically. And so here we are in this current time period, and there is this strong narrative, conspiratorial narrative about what's going on with COVID. And there, again, intelligent people are disagreeing about what it's really about. And for me, it's a little bit of all worlds, right? Where it is a serious condition and you do not want to get it. And it is killing people. And it is this very dangerous thing that needs to be taken seriously as a medical issue. And the circumstances are being manipulated by those in power to amplify the amount of power that they have and to move society in the direction that they would like to see it, which is generally not how I would like to see it personally, and involves way more control and police state tactics than would be preferable on this potentially paradise planet upon which we exist. And so we're heading into this period, which is dangerous. I don't know what to call it except dangerous, because we are going through the part that's sort of like the big shock, right? The big sort of like world-changing event where everybody sort of immediately recognized, like, oh, the world's never going to be the same after this. 9/11, JFK, Tonkin, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, these major, and just say, like, back in this period in the 20s, April 1929, there was something interesting going on back then, wasn't? So this is the start of the Great Depression. And so this period that we're going into it's dangerous. It really is. We need to be so careful and aware of what is happening and of the natural tendency to want to react against this major event, right? And again, setting aside any need for a nefarious agenda, secret cabal, or whatever, we don't actually need that to explain these events, right? A horrible thing happened and people wanted revenge. A horrible thing is happening and people want to bust out and they don't want to be told to stay at home, and they want their rights and they want their government money, and they want there's this big terrifying event has happened, and now there's the reaction against it, and it's unpredictable, and the historical record is not good about how we react, right? It takes incredible self-discipline, training, cultivation of willpower and character to respond well to adversity, right? Our lives are very often just a long list of adverse events that are and our lives are defined by how well we respond to those circumstances. And not very many of us respond with a lot of nobility in the worst times. That's maybe too general a statement, because these crisis times are also the moments when the best of humanity come out, right? When Katrina happens, there's a flood of donations. When 9/11 happened, there was this really precious moment where the US had the sympathy of the whole world. And if we had been able to navigate that skillfully, that 9/11 could have been the catalyst for world peace. We could have said, you know what, that's it. We can't live in a world where that's even possible anymore. We need to disarm. We need to reconcile with our enemies. We need to make sure that if anybody were to attack any other country like that again, the response would be, how dare you? And the people who did it would be completely ostracized. Whereas since 9/11, the US response to that event has exacerbated the conditions that caused that event in the first place, so that there's enough anger and justifiable vitriol at America around the world where people are like, yeah, I mean, that's obviously terrible. Humans don't deserve to die like that. And like, you can't go around peeing on people's legs and telling them that it's rain. Eventually your uppance comes. And so I'm going to slow down for a second, because I feel like I'm yelling a little bit. And, but this is, I think my my energy and my voice in response elevates in response to the intensity of the time. Thank you. And there is this, I feel a strong sense of urgency, especially when we study this and we know what the historical precedents are. We know where we're at in the cycle, right? This time is not a straight line. It is a spiraling being moving through space. And so we're back at this particular spot in the cycle, and we know what happens. We don't know the specific names or places, but we know what happens. This is in alignment with the work of, they're called the structuralists when it comes to the study of mythology. And basically, Joseph Campbell is a classic example of a structuralist, so that it doesn't matter if the hero of the story is King Arthur, Prince Charming, or Luke Skywalker. The structure of the story is the same, where, you know, there's a loss, you get kicked, you know, and the prodigal son gets kicked out of the house, has to go on an adventure, dark night of the soul, redemption, and return to normalcy, but at a next level of reality. So we know, and this is why there's a lot of reasons I study astrology. This is one of the main reasons, is to figure out these patterns. So in order to know where we are in the cosmos, be able to triangulate our location in time and space and identify what's happening, why, what happened before, how can we skillfully navigate our next steps in a way that serves our best evolution. So this is not at all about being comfortable. It's not necessarily going to be fun, but it feels important to figure out what phase we're in and how best to deal with it. And so we are in this phase of the response. That's what we're heading into, is this time when the big, crazy, conspiratorial, maybe weird, world-changing thing has happened, and now it's, what are we going to do about it? What is going to be the collective response? And so this period over the next 18 months is precarious, and I don't know. I will not make any predictions, but I think the historical record speaks for itself, and shows what the tendencies are. And the question will be, how will those energetic tendencies express themselves in this unique period? Yeah. So I'll want to talk next about just like the next couple weeks of astrology, but I want to pause there and ask for any comments, questions, concerns, anything you guys want to add to the discussion here.
Hi, David. Thank you.
Hey, Molly.
I've been thinking a lot about the importance of strategizing versus reacting.
Yeah.
What you're saying is really speaking to me sort of on a collective level of how can we pause and think a little bit and do something intentional rather than just responding and losing so much energy on the way and being so reckless. So I really appreciate that thinking about sort of our history of being reactionary.
Yeah. And it's getting, you know, a person is likely to be able to respond, but populations, less so. It is not a common historical trope to see a large population endure a difficult event and respond with calm and discipline and, like, you know, like a ninja would. And that the only time that does happen is with strong leadership, with leadership who is stable and calm and knows the plan, is able to absorb the blow, be unmoved, and continue along with a skillful action. Thanks for being here, Dakota.
Any hope for the collective right now, or is it just sort of like the train leaves the station and we all just get to like take care of ourselves, like silo in our small communities, and like, and who and how, who can we be and how can we show up in the world where that's like a train that's leaving the station?
Yeah.
You know?
I really think one of the strategies is to be very intentional about who you choose as a leader. And for me, like, Donald Trump is in a position of power, but he's not a leader. I'm not following him. I'm not doing what he tells me to do.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely not. And so acknowledging who has power versus who is a leader. And AOC, absolutely. She is a leader and has some power, right? And so figuring out who is leading in a direction that you want to go, and aligning your thoughts, words, and actions with that movement, and get on that train. I was really inspired this week by the Intersected podcast. And so essentially I'm going to shout out Naomi Klein again. She was the guest host. So The Intercept, wonderful news source, very, very left leaning, but progressive. And you know, started by Glenn Greenwald, who published the Edward Snowden disclosure documents. Really, really powerful news source. Well, again, they are leading in a direction that I want to go. I don't know how much power they have. You know, they're not establishment media. They don't really control the narrative, but I value their contributions to the media landscape.
And the more attention
so Naomi,
you give them, the more power they'll get, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So Naomi Klein was the guest host on their podcast, which is called Intercepted. And she spoke to this co-housing community based in Oakland. And they were talking about the value of living in community in general, but also specifically in this moment. You know, their quarantine looked very different. Their homeschooling looks very different than, you know, for example, the single mom with 2 kids cooped up in an apartment where she's surrounded by other people living their lives in their apartments, but there's no interaction, there's no cooperation, no collaboration. They're just all, you know, literally in their silos, struggling independent from one another. Whereas they in Oakland, they've got this block of houses that have a shared backyard and a trampoline and a garden, and so they're growing a lot of their own food. They're living together, and let's be clear, living in community is challenging. You got to deal with other people and their issues, and even worse, you got to deal with yourself, and you can't hide, and your own issues get brought up. And but they were speaking to the profound value of having invested in that way of life, and sort of the payback that they're receiving in this crisis moment, and the way that it's a model. The thing about it is it's a more efficient way to live, and it's it's cheaper for everybody. Mental health is easier to take care of and keep track of. It makes so much more sense on so many levels. Healthcare, so childcare, yeah, childcare, exactly. It's not just one person's job. The kids have each other, right? They can go play and just be, you know. So anyway, that's the sort of thing that feels like leadership to me. That's very much the direction my life is going to pursue, what it looks like to live in communities. Because again, we as humans need to find a better way to continue to exist on this planet. Otherwise, we're not going to exist on this planet very much longer. And so that to me is finding the leadership that I want to follow, and working with or around the people in power. Because I think this is a really important distinction between power and leadership. And so, yeah, speaking of power and leadership, let's look at the chart for, okay, let's look at today's chart just to give us a reference point. This is today at 10 a.m. in Denver. And okay, so we see some familiar things. We've got Ketu in Gandanta here. We have Mars and the Moon right next to each other. And so that we just want to be specifically today and tomorrow. Just note any explosive emotions when Mars and the Moon get together. It tends to all the emotions that were maybe simmering below the surface all of a sudden come to a boil, and so we just want to watch out for that. So okay, here we are. This is what we're looking at. Sun and Mercury together in Cancer. Venus has moved into Gemini. It's with Rahu, so that can create a really unsettled quality in our relationships. Venus is the indicator of our love and romantic relationships, and in Gemini, so like Venus in Gemini is very flirtatious, right? Gemini is the person at the party who wants to talk to every single person in the room and has all sorts of anecdotes and little jokes and is really fun to talk to, and maybe like almost definitely doesn't remember your name at the end of the night, but will tell you one more joke as they're like getting in the car on the way out the door. And so when Rahu is in Gemini, that quality is exacerbated, and then Venus gets there, and it just becomes this sort of like frenetic romantic energy, and it's a little bit all over the place. And so we just want to be mindful of that. For me, let's see, I am comfortable saying this. I've been scrolling Tinder more often than I ever do. Like first of all, I downloaded it again, which is a big step. And I'm in a new place, whatever. But I checked myself with that. I was like, am I doing this because I actually like want to meet someone to hang out with, or is this compulsive because I've just like, I'm Gemini and blah, that. So just being careful. It can be a fun energy, but we want to be mindful of it so it's not too scattered and getting ourselves in trouble. Okay, so let's just take a little mental snapshot of this, and let's look and see how it changes less than 2 weeks from now. So this is the chart for, let's do this one, for August 17th. Okay, so the big thing that happens on the 16th, 17th, well, really in that period, 15, 16, 17, Mars has changed signs, has gone over Gandanta here, right? So here's one of our Gandanta points, and Mars is here at 0 degrees, so right on the cusp here. Draw this little shape. So yeah, Mars is going across Gandanta there. The Sun and Mercury, both at 1 degree here, have crossed this Gandanta point. And so I really want to highlight this period of days, August, really like 13 to 18 is this 5-day period where Mars, Mercury, and the Sun are going over Gandanta points. And it is, and Ketu is of course still in its Gandanta point down here. So this is each of the 3 Gandanta points has planets on top of it, and there's just a lot of movement happening in this period, and it is this place again, where bones meet, where water and fire come together. And if you use a 4-element system, now Ayurveda looks at the 5 elements, right? In which case, so if you think of the 5 elements as creating a pentagon, there really is no opposite to any element, right? Because if you go opposite any point in a pentagon, you get to a side. So you end up somewhere in between 2 other elements. So that's generally how I think of the elements, as they don't really have opposites. They have angular relationships. But if you use a 4-element system, which the thing with Jyotish is that the ether element is here, right? Like the whole thing is happening within the ether element, and then we have fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water, right? So within the chart, within manifest experiential reality, we're dealing with a 4-element system in Jyotish. And so if you use a 4-element system, you've now created a square, in which case there are opposites, and fire and water are natural opposites. And so this is just, it's a place of opposites coming together in so many ways, in these multiple locations around the chart. So we've talked a lot about K2 in Gandanta. So that's happening. That's really active until, what did we say? Until October, at least. And in that period, the nodes will change signs on September 22nd, 23rd. I think I already mentioned that, but they'll actually change signs. And just a quick note, there's some controversy about whether Rahu and Ketu are exalted at any place in the chart. There's multiple different discussions about that. Different authors say different things. Very commonly, Rahu and Ketu are said to be exalted in Taurus and Scorpio. So it's very possible that we're heading into that period of exaltation. I am pretty convinced by the argument that Rahu and Ketu are exalted here in Sagittarius and Gemini. That's a terrible G. And that's an S. We don't have time to go into it right now, but just know that that's a discussion, and I think that looking at this historical record, looking at the qualities of Rahu and what would exalt the insatiable energy of Rahu, it's the qualities of Gemini. It is absolutely, and Ketu as a very spirit oriented planet. Ketu doesn't care about worldly life. It only cares about your karmic process, your karmic being. It only cares about spirituality, the unmanifest. And so to put that in Sagittarius as the most religious sign makes sense to me. So anyway, that's a bit of speculative discussion. But really, okay, so August is the hottest, often the hottest month in the year, right? It's the height of summer. It's hot. And we have Mars, the red planet, which is known as the warrior. It is very much a fiery planet, going into its own sign, which is Aries, which is a movable fire sign. And so Mars gets really, really strong and is in this unstable Gandanta place. I've referenced it a lot lately, but Avatar: The Last Airbender is really influencing my thinking. It's a great reference point. So many wonderful workable metaphors in that, and this Mars in Gandanta going into Aries makes me think of one of the characters who's a firebender, and she's like out of control, and she's trying to shoot fire, but it's just flying all over the place, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous and very, very powerful, but out of control. So we want to watch for that, and be really, really careful with our anger. And when I say things like be careful with our anger, it's like, oh yeah, totally. I'll be on the watch, and I'll practice my, Soham meditation or whatever. The tendency is that it's going to be out of control, right? And so we just want to, like, the anger is going to be there. There's no sense in trying to avoid it or suppress it or reject it. It's going to be there. This fiery quality is going to arise within us, and the question is, through which filter do we direct it? Which avenue of expression do we allow it to take? Does it come in the form of exercise and passionate activism and these sort of other skillful ways to discharge heat, to use it as energy and motivation? Or does it come as yelling at your loved ones, self-loathing, this sort of like just pointless anger? And again, this is where, as individuals, generally we have more skills to deal with our individual dramas. And if we don't, we can individually reach out for support and talk to a friend about it. As a collective, America has anger issues. Let's be honest. And so it is this time when, okay, so Mars has been in Pisces, which is the poet and philosopher and metaphysician, and it's this contemplative being, and it's a water sign. So the watery qualities of Pisces soothe the explosive, fiery nature of Aries. And now that it moves into its own sign of Aries, it's in its own zone. It's sitting on the fire throne. It's just, raring to go and ready to take action. That mobile quality of fire, it's ready to move and do stuff. And it can be like, it's this very, I think of Aries, it's like a spark plug, where just a little spark can set a whole forest ablaze. And that's really interesting and exciting. And Aries loves excitement, and there's this impulsive quality. Aries is very much like the preteen of the zodiac, where it's just like, boom, I want to do this. I want to do this now. Now I want to do this. And it's just like this very rambunctious energy. And so Mars brings some force to that. Now, Mars is going to move in and out of Aries for the rest of the year. Mars barely gets out of Gandanta. It gets to like 4 degrees here, and then turns retrograde and goes back, and then turns direct and comes back over here. So Mars is back and forth between these two signs for the rest of the year. And so there's likely going to be this push and pull. The part of us that Mars is the warrior quality within us. It is the part of us that wants to and is willing to suffer and fight for what we believe is right and righteous. And so that part of us is going to move between this more philosophical zone where it has been for a long time now. And it's like, okay, what do I really feel is good and right? And maybe I'm gonna write a protest poem and really be dedicated to my spiritual practices. That's Mars and Pisces energy. Mars and Aries energy is more like, I'm gonna get out in the streets and punch someone in the face if they don't march with me, right? It is this much more impulsive, active, physically oriented quality. One of the things that I see a lot with, and it's a famous thing in astrology, Aries rising people or people with Mars in Aries will often have a wound or a scar on their head or face. And there's like the way that the chart rules the body, that's shown, Aries has to do with the head, but it's also because there's just this like physicality and risk-taking and impulsive, like, I'm gonna climb that tree. And you don't really test the branch before you climb up it, and then you fall, and you know, it's that sort of energy. That's what we're moving into. And back and forth and in and out of. Let's look at some dates. Okay. It is August. Okay, what's today? Today's the 8th. So one of the things that's happening, so Mercury is what we call combust right now. When Mercury is within 14 degrees of the sun, it is what we call combust. And basically the brightness, the power of the sun overpowers the quality of the planet. And the image, I was thinking about this earlier, the image that came to mind is, you know, when like Elmer Fudd is hunting Bugs Bunny, and Bugs like puts a carrot in the end of his rifle, but Elmer doesn't notice, but then he fires and the rifle explodes in his face, and he's got like the gunpowder on his face, and he's just sort of like stunned there for a moment, and he's like blinking and he just doesn't move, and that's sort of like end of scene. That's kind of what combustion is. It creates this paralysis where, and same sort of thing where when you've got heat exhaustion, or you know, or it's just too hot to do anything, it's just too hot to do anything. And so the natural power of any planet that is combust is sapped by the sun. And this is sort of the dual quality of the sun, where it gives us all life, it grows our food, it warms our houses, and if you're out in the desert, the sun is what's going to kill you. The sun is also what will burn down your house and sunburn you, and so it's got this dual nature. It's fire is its own opposite, and in the pentagonal structure of the elements, fire is its own opposite. So that's a whole other thing. But it has this very sattvic nature where, you know, we all want to think of like, oh, the light, we bring light to darkness and we're illuminated, and that quality of illumination is, and you know, the dawning of a new day is this very inspiring, uplifting, beautiful energy. And the sun will absolutely burn you if you give it a chance. And so it's from August 3rd until September 3rd that Mercury is combust. And so Mercury is our power of curiosity and communication. And so if you're, you know, it's a tough time for students. Honestly, Mercury is our perpetual student. And I mean, it's a tough time for students on a lot of levels right now. And so for students out there who are maybe not feeling super motivated to write that paper or, you know, read their books, yeah, don't worry. By the time September gets here, you'll have a little bit more Mercury will move into Virgo, its own sign where it's exalted. It'll be fine. You'll get that energy back for more academic study, that curiosity back. But right now, it's the dog days of summer. We're burnt out in that way. Rest in the shade. And so August 16th also marks the start of Leo season. Now, this is, of course, different than tropical astrology. You know, according to the newspaper, Leo season has already started. We're in the middle of it right now. I have trouble keeping track of both systems. I just focus on this. This is sidereal astrology. This is where the sun actually is in the sky. Not to be biased, but I am. You know, astronomical reality is more interesting to me than just fixed points in the sky. So yeah, we're in Leo season. Leo, represented by the lion, is the archetypal king. Donald Trump is Leo rising. This is the season where we're connecting with the king within us, men and women connecting to the king quality within us. You know, that regardless of physical sex. We each have both genders living within us. We have both masculine and feminine qualities operating within us. And the queen is a very different energy than the king. And so for all of us to connect to that king quality is a good practice, starting August 16th, starting now really. There is a great book, am I gonna be able to, I think it's called The King Within, and what is his name? Robert, I'll post it in a blog or something. I'll share it. Just a good resource for this sort of thing. So yeah, what's nice about this transition is that Saturn will no longer be directly across from the sun. You know, right now the sun is here in Cancer, and Saturn is aspecting. It's just putting pressure. It's adding to that sort of limited source of energy and vibrancy, and so Saturn is compressing our sort of like, to borrow a term, Saturn is compressing our soul vibrance right now, and so you know, when the sun moves into Leo, the sun rules Leo. That's its own sign. It is in its full power, and I'm aware we're at 90 minutes, and so we want to wrap up in just a few minutes here, but I just want to finish this thought that so this is from August 16th to September 16th, the month of Leo, and it's a really important time to be connecting to our own sovereignty. Who is the king of our kingdom? In my life, you know, the kingdom that is my existence, I am the sovereign ruler. And the question comes up is, what kind of ruler am I? Am I benevolent? And I take care, you know, when my people need food, I offer them good food. When my people need protection, we put our walls up. When the people need vacation, we have a festival, right? Like, all of that happening within the sphere of my own being. So ideally, I am a benevolent king for myself. Sometimes, more often than I would care to admit or even recognize, I am a total tyrant, and I am harsh, and you know, there's martial law in action, and you know, secret police roaming the streets and throwing me in prison for stepping out of line in the slightest. That exists in my sphere of being, and I do my best to recognize it when it's happening, in order to invite the more benevolent king to say, hey, maybe everything's actually just fine, and those protests actually have a valid concern, and we could you know, maybe bake them some cookies and raise some money for their cause. Okay, great. The third archetype in that triangle is the one who abdicates the throne, the weakling, the one who turns responsibility over to the defense minister, or to to Jafar, for, you know, to call out Aladdin, right? That king starts out as a weakling, and Jafar totally is just the magician, has all the power, and so, you know, our current Orange King has this amazing capacity to be both the weakling and the tyrant at the same time, and that does tend to be how it goes. Is that there's this bipolar quality bouncing back and forth between those two, where, you know, he's all powerful and can do whatever he wants, but then nothing is his fault, and he's not responsible for any of it, and he didn't even know about this, and so that tendency to abdicate the throne is a dereliction of duty, but it's escapism, right? It's like, oh my God, this is too much to handle, and I just need to check out and you know, watch reruns of The Office, because that makes me feel safe. And so really valuable time next month, starting August 16, 17, to notice that bipolar quality of the tyrant and the weakling. And the resolution of that bipolar quality is the third direction, which is that benevolent quality that actually gives directionality and is sort of incorporates both of those. And like, hey, we need that strength and we need that gentleness, and we're gonna harmonize it in order to move forward in a good way. I'll hang out with you guys all day. I have another hour's worth of material. We can totally keep going, but we have been trying to keep these to around 90 minutes. So we'll do another one next month, sometime around the full moon. And again, these recordings will be at vedadave.com/library. They'll be in my blog post. It'll also be on cultivatebalance.com, where it says COVID. There's then like a strong. So it says Corona. Okay, all right. I'll turn it back over to Sierra and Molly here.
Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you, David, for just like connecting a million different dots for all of us. It's brilliant. It's a lot of cool stuff to think about and reflect on. And we hope that all of you join us again next month. If there are like specific angles that are really interesting for you or things you want to learn more about, send those questions over, because David is really good at accommodating and like
incorporating,
clarifying for all of us.
Also, you want to give a couple little action steps on smoothing that in Ayurveda, but like fire element. So if everyone wants, because like that's a lot of fire coming at you. Like August being the hottest month right now, we're smelling smoke in the air in Boulder. There's like apparently fires burning in Grand Junction. We've got Mars, we've got Aries. It is hot. So
yeah, Mars and Aries, Sun and Leo. It's a lot like fiery, fire.
So
like you shouldn't yell fire, but like that's what's happening. Like I'm sweating. I didn't even realize I'm fully sweating.
It's wet.
37 in London right now. It's just hot. The world is hot. The culture, society is on fire.
Yeah.
So how do we soothe Pitta? How do we soothe Pitta?
Let's throw some things out there for cooling purposes, right? Rose water, spritz yourself with rose water. Eat some cucumbers, real cooling. Focus on the sweet taste.
If you can get in water or be around water, great, because as we talked about, that's the opposite of fire in some senses. Also limiting like spicy foods, that might be an obvious one, but also like fermented foods are very hot. Salty foods are very hot. So more of the sweet taste, more of the bitter taste, that's all going to be a little cooling.
Taking a nap in the shade.
15 minutes only though, don't get crazy.
Yes.
And moonbathing.
Moonbathing. That's exactly right.
Moonbathing. Wear white clothing and go out under the moon.
White flowers.
With some white flowers and a silver cup of milk and some beautiful crystals and go and moonbathe the way you would sunbathe.
That's exactly right. Yeah, so we all need to remember to embrace these tools that we have, because those are some pretty basic, simple things that can help us cool down.
Does anyone have any last quick questions that we can clarify before we close out here?
I would just like to say, someone who's new to this, I am completely in awe of your depth of knowledge here. It's been really cool in your field of study. Normally, when I sit in lectures and things like that, my attention drops off usually about the 20 to 30 minute mark. I've been completely glued in, and I think that's testament to your ability to hold this. So thank you very much. It's a lot of information for me, and something for you. However, I will certainly be back. So thank you very much. And a few things. I'll message you after for a couple of things development. But thanks very much, guys.
Good, Graham. Thank you. I'm so glad you came. And it's also I'm so glad that I kept your attention. It's also because I just yell the whole time. It's one of these strategies. I didn't get enough attention as a kid, and so I've learned to just yell. If I want people to pay attention, I just talk really, really loud, really fast, and that really works. Yeah. And the one I want to throw one more thing. Shitali is a pranayama practice where you can either just put your tongue on the back of your teeth, or you can curl your tongue and breathe in through your teeth. You go. Yeah, it works better like this. You sort of curl your tongue and purse your lips like that. And you can feel how the air coming in is cooler than it otherwise would be.
Air conditioning.
Yeah, air conditioning.
And it's your own personal air conditioning. So that's another way to cool it down.
Wow, David, thank you so much. Your brilliance is apparent.
Wishing everyone a very cool month, and we hope to see you again. Keep an eye out for future events and discussions.
VedaDave.com, cultivatebalance.com. We're here for you.
Thanks, everybody. So nice to see you.
We
We'll
love
see you
you.
soon.
Bye. You stop the recording. Thank you.